Graham Whitmore stood at the altar, every inch of him designed. His navy tuxedo was sharp enough to cut glass. His shoes mirror-shined. His platinum watch ticking like judgment. The hush of 100 high society guests sat behind him, all waiting for the same moment, the bride's entrance. He checked the time again, 12 minutes late. Delilah, his sister, caught his eye from the second pew and raised one brow with a look that said, "Breathe." He didn't. His jaw clenched tighter. Then the organist stopped playing. Murmurs rolled like a ripple through the crowd. A bridesmaid stepped toward the aisle, her heels clicking too fast. She whispered something to the wedding planner. The planner stiffened, turned toward Graham with a professional but pale face. "She's not coming." Graham blinked once. Just once. Then everything inside him dropped silent. Aunt Louise gasped behind him. Someone's phone buzzed. Claire, his bride-to-be, judge's daughter, Charleston debutante, social media darling, had vanished. No message, no call. Just gone. Delilah stood immediately, but Graham held up a hand. "Don't." "Not here." The wedding planner leaned in again, voice quieter. "There's a note." In the dressing room. Graham moved before she finished, strides long and sure, even as the foundation of his carefully built life cracked beneath his feet. He found the note, folded on a velvet vanity stool, resting beside a lipstick cap and an untouched bouquet. "I can't do this. I'm not what you want. I don't want to disappear in your world. I'm sorry. No signature." She didn't need one. By the time he returned, the guests had begun to scatter. A few stayed for the gossip. Most left politely, glancing with pity, or worse, satisfaction. Delilah was waiting at the steps, arms crossed over her rose-pink dress. "You okay?" Graham's smile was tight and flat. "Fine. You don't look fine." "I'll handle it." She tilted her head. "Handle what? That you got left at the altar? That your perfect image just got lit on fire in front of the entire city?" He stared out at the Charleston skyline, where sun-washed mansions hugged the harbor like they had something to prove. "She knew what this wedding meant," he said, voice like glass. "To the company. The investors, my board, everything," Delilah softened. "Maybe that's the problem." He said nothing. Down the church steps, Otis waited beside the black car, engine humming. Graham slid into the back seat, pulled the door shut behind him, and leaned his head back against the leather. His phone vibrated nonstop. Texts, calls, notifications stacking like insults. He muted it. "Where to, sir?" Otis asked, watching him in the mirror. "Just drive." Otis raised a brow but said nothing. He pulled away from the curb, gliding through Charleston's historic streets, rows of pastel-painted homes and swaying Spanish moss. It was a postcard town. Clean, rich, controlled. Exactly how Graham liked his life. Until today. They turned down a narrow side street near the West Side Market. Vendors packed the sidewalk, colorful tents, folding tables, coolers full of homemade lemonade, local crafts, jams, soaps. The scent of honeysuckle and fried dough hung in the air. Laughter spilled from a group of kids playing with chalk on the corner. Graham stared out the window, half listening to the hum of the street, and caught a flash of lavender. A woman was waving her hands, animated and alive, arguing playfully with a man twice her size who was trying to haggle over soap prices. $10, she said. Final. 8, the man grinned. Then go to Walgreens. This here's small batch, made with love and actual lavender buds. The man laughed and paid 10 mats. She turned toward a younger customer, packaging soap in recycled brown paper with a twine bow. Her movements were fast, efficient, practiced. But her smile, wide, unfiltered, was what caught Graham. She didn't know she was being watched. "Stop here," he said. Otis looked confused. "Here?" Graham opened the door before Otis could finish. Heat rolled in. The sounds of the city felt louder outside the cocoon of his car. He walked slowly toward her table, adjusting the sleeves of his jacket, scanning the hand-labeled soaps. Lavender Calm, Sweetgrass Dream, Lemon Wake. She glanced up, and their eyes met. "Sorry," she said, already sounding annoyed. "I don't have change for 100. I'm not here to buy soap." She narrowed her eyes. "Then move. You're blocking my table." Graham paused, then let out the softest breath of something dangerously close to amusement. "I want to talk to you." "Privately." She laughed. "You lost?" "No." "Then this must be a prank, because last I checked, guys in tailored suits don't hang around markets talking to girls selling $5 soap." "I'm not here to flirt." "Good. Because I've had enough of fake smiles today." He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a business card. Graham Whitmore, founder and CEO of Link Tech. Her face didn't change. "Still not flirting?" "I'm offering a business deal." She crossed her arms. "You want to stock my soaps in your fancy bathrooms or something?" "I want you to marry me." Silence swallowed the corner. A breeze tugged at the tablecloth. Someone dropped a bag of kettle corn behind them, and the world kept spinning. But she just stared, mouth parted. "Excuse me?" "You heard me?" "No, I don't think I did." "You said marry—" "Yes." She blinked, stepped back slightly, like she was bracing for a joke. "Is this some kind of viral dare?" "I'll pay you $1 million. 6 months. On paper, public appearances. I need a wife immediately." "You get paid. You walk away after. No obligations." "No expectations. Clean contract." She blinked again. "You must be out of your mind." "Possibly." "And you want me?" "Yes." She looked around, as if someone else might be getting punked. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." She shook her head slowly. No, I don't think so." "Think about it." "I'll be at the Whitmore building tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bring a lawyer if you want." He started to turn. "Wait," she said. He looked back. "What makes you think I'm the type of girl who'd say yes?" He held her gaze. "You're the only person I've seen today who didn't pretend." Then he walked back to the car, not waiting for an answer. Behind him, Raina stared down at the card in her hand. It was glossy, cold, just like the man who gave it to her. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. Morning in Charleston smelled like warm bread and salt air, drifting in through cracked windows and screen doors. Raina Brooks stirred her cup of tea with the edge of a spoon, listening to the soft creak of her grandmother's porch swing behind her. "You didn't sleep," Mabel said, voice low and sure. Raina didn't look back. "I slept. Some. And I was a rockette." Raina sighed and set the tea down. The card sat on the table, face up. That same name staring at her in bold white font, Graham Whitmore. CEO, Link Tech. She'd Googled him the night before. The photos were endless. Him in sleek suits shaking hands with senators, gracing Forbes covers, hosting digital summits in Hong Kong and London. He smiled in every picture, but never with his eyes. He didn't seem like a man who asked. He seemed like a man who acquired. "You said he offered what now?" Mabel asked, sitting down beside her, arms wrapped in a shawl the color of peaches. $1 million, 6 months, just for appearances. "And he picked you?" "Out of nowhere," Raina said. "I was selling soap." Mabel took a sip from her mug. "So, you gonna say yes?" Raina stared out at the street. A bike passed by with a bell dinging. A kid with a backpack waved at them from the sidewalk. "I don't know," she said. "It feels insane. Sugar, life's insane. But sometimes it throws you a rope. You gotta decide if you're willing to grab it or keep treading water." Raina didn't answer. The porch creaked beneath her heels. Inside, a past-due electric bill sat unopened. Her landlord's voicemail from last night said the grace period was over, and the job she applied for at the corner pharmacy. They called to say they filled it. "Sorry. Best of luck." She closed her eyes, breath shallow. $1 million. 6 months. No strings, he said. She didn't believe him, but still. She looked at the card again, its glossy surface reflecting the morning sun. The receptionist on the 31st floor of the Whitmore building wore red lipstick and a headset, her eyes never leaving her dual screens. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked without looking. "I was told to come at 10, Raina said, smoothing the sleeve of her denim jacket. The receptionist blinked up, then did a small double-take. "Name?" "Raina Brooks." She tapped a few keys. "Mr. Whitmore is expecting you." "You can go on back. Elevator to the left, top floor." "He's in the penthouse suite." The ride up was quiet. Sleek walls, soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. Raina's reflection stared back at her from the mirrored panel. Her curls were tied up in a scarf. No makeup. Just lip balm and nerves. She stepped out into a sunlit lobby where floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Charleston harbor in full, glimmering blue and gold. The floors gleamed like museum marble. And there he was, standing behind a minimalist desk, fingers dancing over a touchscreen tablet, in a slate-gray suit that looked like it cost more than her grandma's house. Graham glanced up. "You came. You sound surprised." "I'm not." He set the tablet down and gestured toward a leather chair. "Sit." She didn't move. "I'm not staying long." "Just here for answers." Graham didn't argue. He nodded. "Why me?" she asked. "You were authentic, unfiltered. Everyone else I've spoken to this week wanted something from me. You didn't." "That's not an answer. That's a compliment." He considered that. "You're right." He walked around the desk and leaned against its edge. "My board is watching me. The media's already speculating. After what happened at the altar, stability is everything." "A polished fiancé? Too predictable. Too replaceable." "You want shock value," Raina said. "I want credibility. Someone the press won't see coming, and someone who won't fall apart under pressure. And you think that's me? You didn't blink when I said I'd pay you $1 million to pretend to be my wife. That tells me something. It tells you I've been broke long enough to consider it." He gave the barest nod. "Honesty again." There was a pause. It hung thick between them. "I need it in writing," she said at last. "Of course. I want control over what I wear, what I say, and where I go. I'm not some trophy." "Noted. And I want half up front." His mouth curved, but it wasn't quite a smile. "You negotiate like a lawyer." "No," she said. I negotiate like a woman who doesn't have time to get played. He stood straight, walked to a side cabinet, pulled out a folder. Review this, he said, handing it over. Have a lawyer look at it. You have until tomorrow. Raina took the folder. It was heavier than she expected. Legal weight, real. What if I say no? Then I thank you for your time, and you leave. Simple. She searched his face for any crack in the cool. Do people always do what you say? Almost always. She turned toward the elevator. Then I guess this'll be new for both of us. Before she reached the door, he said, Raina. She stopped, looking over her shoulder. If you do say yes, you'll be entering a world that doesn't know how to be kind. People will smile with knives in their pockets. They'll look at your shoes, your voice, your past. Everything. I know. He studied her for a long beat. Then why are you even considering this? She turned fully then, lifted her chin just slightly. Because I know how to survive places I don't belong. And I don't scare easy. The elevator opened behind her with a soft chime. She stepped in, the contract in her hand, her reflection clear in the mirrored doors. For the first time in a long time, Raina didn't feel small. Just uncertain. And maybe, just maybe, that was something worth chasing. The pen hovered above the signature line. Raina sat at her grandmother's kitchen table, contract spread out in front of her, legal pad to one side, and her half-empty mug of coffee already gone cold. Her leg bounced beneath the table, fast and restless, the morning quiet somehow too loud around her. Mabel watched from the sink, drying a dish slowly. So, Raina didn't answer yet. She reread the line again. This agreement shall remain in effect for a minimum of 6 months, after which either party may opt to dissolve the arrangement with no further obligation, financial or otherwise. Her heart thudded in her chest like it knew something her brain wasn't ready to admit. It's just pretending, she muttered. It's not real. You keep saying that, Mabel said, setting the plate down. But you're still thinking about him. That man with the frozen forehead and the $1,000 shoes. Raina looked up. It's not him I'm thinking about. It's what $1 million could do. Mabel raised an eyebrow. I could pay off the medical bills, fix the roof, put us in a better neighborhood. I could reopen my online shop, hire help, set up long-term inventory. Or, Mabel said, wiping her hands on a towel, you could sign yourself into a life where you don't even recognize your own voice by the time it's over. Raina exhaled, sharp and tired. I'd still be me. Mabel crossed the room, pulled out the chair across from her and sat. Her gaze was steady, warm, but never soft. Then make sure that contract doesn't take that from you. Raina glanced back at the pen. It was her name. Her future, her gamble. She signed. The private notary Graham sent arrived precisely at 2:00 p.m. with a handshake, a neutral smile, and zero small talk. By 2:15, the check was in her hands. The ink was still drying when the black town car rolled up in front of the house. Otis stepped out and tipped his hat. Miss Brooks, you always this formal? Only when the boss is paying me. She smirked, but her heart beat louder. She hugged Mabel once at the door, holding on for a moment longer than she'd meant to. Her grandmother didn't speak, just pressed something into Raina's palm before letting go. It was a tiny lavender sachet. For peace, Mabel whispered. Raina pocketed it without a word. The car ride to the hotel was quiet. Otis didn't pry, didn't fill the air with small talk. The world outside rolled by in slow motion. Brick sidewalks, hanging ferns, tourists with cameras. But inside the car, Time felt like it was sprinting. She was getting married in less than an hour, to a stranger. For money. And the strangest part, she didn't feel scared. Not yet. The Whitmore Hotel had been transformed. White hydrangeas filled the rooftop garden. String lights crisscrossed overhead, catching the late-day sun. A string quartet played soft jazz, the kind that made everything feel intentional. Graham stood near the altar, speaking quietly to a sharply dressed woman Raina didn't recognize. His suit was darker this time, with a steel blue tie that matched the sky. When he saw her step off the elevator, his words stopped mid-sentence. She hadn't worn white. She chose soft gray, a wrap dress that hugged her waist and ended just above her knees. She paired it with silver sandals and a borrowed clutch. No veil, no pearls, just a clear gaze and steady breath. His eyes moved from her shoes to her face, then settled on her eyes. "You look different," he said when she approached. "I look like me." He nodded once. "Good." The woman beside him extended a hand. "Naomi Lee, head of PR. Of course you have a PR person at your wedding. It's more of a press strategy with floral arrangements," Naomi said dryly. "But yes. We're here to manage optics." Raina tilted her head. "So I'm a headline now?" "You're the story," Naomi replied. "So let's make it one worth reading." The officiant cleared his throat nearby. "We're ready when you are." Raina's pulse skipped. She turned to Graham. "No rehearsals?" "No point." "It's short." She laughed under her breath. "This whole thing is short." His gaze flicked to her lips. "Some things don't need to last long to change everything." She looked away before his words could land. Or maybe before they could settle too deep. Guests were minimal. Delilah in a crimson dress, a few board members, Naomi, and a photographer discreetly capturing every angle. There were no vows. Just signatures. A few lines recited with mechanical precision. A flash of rings. Applause that sounded rehearsed. Then it was done. "Congratulations," someone said behind them. Delilah stepped in, hugging Raina tightly. "You did it. You wore sandals to a billionaire's wedding." "I'm in awe," Raina smiled. "I figured stilettos weren't my story." "Not yet," Delilah grinned. "But let's see what happens in Chapter 2. They walked through a wave of polite nods and champagne flutes. Graham's voice came low beside her. "We'll go home now. Your home. Our home, for now." She looked up at him. "Just don't expect me to call it that." He didn't flinch. "I don't expect you to call me anything." They reached the car. Otis opened the door. Raina paused before stepping in. "You sure this isn't going to blow up in your face?" Graham met her eyes. "It already did." "You're just the fallout I chose." She didn't smile, but something flickered in her chest. Uncertain, unpredictable, and just beginning to burn. She slid into the seat. The door closed. And behind them, Charleston rolled past, soft and slow. But the story, it had just started to speed up. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The car slowed in front of a wide, ivy-covered estate on the edge of the Battery. Tall iron gates opened with a soft groan, revealing manicured hedges, stone fountains, and a columned house straight out of a Southern history book. Everything about it said money, old money. The kind that didn't raise its voice. It whispered and expected the world to listen. Raina leaned forward, resting her forearm against the window. "So, this is it." Graham glanced over from his seat. "Home." She turned to him. For you. For now, it's ours. She didn't respond. The car rolled up the drive and came to a smooth stop. Otis stepped out, opened her door, and gave her a small nod. Inside, cool air hit her skin. The foyer was cavernous, flooded with light from a massive skylight above. A chandelier sparkled in soft motion. Polished wood floors stretched endlessly beneath her feet, and a grand staircase curved to the second floor like something out of a dream, or a movie she'd never been invited to star in. A man in a grey vest stood stiffly beside the entry table, hands clasped. "This is Miles," Graham said. "House manager. He'll assist you with anything you need." Miles bowed slightly. "Pleasure, Mrs. Whitmore." Raina raised a brow. "You don't have to call me that. It's protocol, ma'am. Okay?" "And my protocol says Raina is fine." Graham looked like he might say something, but didn't. Miles cleared his throat and gestured toward the hallway. "We've prepared the guest wing for your stay. If you'll follow me." Raina didn't move. "Guest wing?" she asked. Graham adjusted his cufflink. "There are 2 bedrooms. I'll be in the main suite. This isn't a romantic arrangement." She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. "You think I want romance?" His jaw twitched. "I just wanted clarity," he said. "You sure know how to make a girl feel welcome." She followed Miles down a long hallway lined with oil paintings and antique mirrors. The house didn't smell like home. It smelled like furniture polish and cold air conditioning, like somewhere too clean to exhale. The room they led her to was beautiful. Muted pastels, a canopy bed, fresh flowers on the side table. But it wasn't hers. Not really. Miles excused himself with a polite nod. The door clicked softly behind him. Raina sat on the edge of the bed, kicked off her sandals, and ran her fingers across the embroidered comforter. It was soft. Luxurious. Weightless. She felt none of those things. A quiet knock pulled her from thought. "Come in," she said. Delilah popped her head in, a tray balanced in her hands. "I figured you'd be hungry, or annoyed, or both." Raina blinked, surprised. Delilah stepped inside and set the tray down on a small side table. Grilled cheese, tomato soup, and a tall glass of lemonade. "I didn't think this place did comfort food," Raina said. "They don't." "I made it." Raina smiled for the first time that day. "Thank you." Delilah sat in the chair opposite the bed, kicked off her heels, and curled one leg beneath her. "So, how's it feel to be Charleston's most talked-about bride? Like I stepped into someone else's shoes?" Delilah studied her. "You didn't. You brought your own. That takes guts." Raina picked up the sandwich and took a bite. It was perfect. Crispy, gooey, warm. "Graham always this charming?" Delilah laughed. "He used to be different." "Before the company, before all the pressure. Now he just wears ambition like a second skin. It doesn't breathe much. Sounds suffocating." "It is. But he means well, somewhere deep, deep inside." Raina sipped the lemonade. "Not sure I'm interested in going deep," Delilah shrugged. "Then just be you. That'll scare him more than anything." Raina looked at her, quiet for a moment. "Why are you being kind to me?" "Because I've been in rooms like this, pretending I belonged. And it's exhausting. You don't pretend, Raina. You just exist. And somehow that makes this whole arrangement feel a little more real." They sat in silence for a while. Comfortable, easy. Later that night, Raina stepped out onto the small balcony attached to her room. The city shimmered in the distance, soft and golden under the early evening stars. Below, the garden glowed faintly. Pathways lit by soft lanterns, hedges trimmed with care, A fountain burbled in the center, quiet and elegant. She heard footsteps on the gravel. Graham. He walked slowly, hands in his pockets, tie loosened, jacket gone. He paused near the fountain, looked up, and caught her watching. They locked eyes across the distance. She didn't wave. Neither did he, but neither of them looked away. Back in her room, she slid the lavender sachet from her pocket, held it close, and whispered, "I'm still me." And somewhere, under all that glass and stone, she hoped that meant something. The scent of espresso and fresh linen floated through the hall as Raina padded barefoot into the kitchen the next morning. Sunlight poured in through wide windows, warming the marble countertops and illuminating every spotless corner of the space. It was the kind of kitchen you saw in magazines. Beautiful, untouched, a little too perfect. She opened a cabinet and blinked. Rows of matching mugs lined up like soldiers. She reached for one, then stopped. The handles were all facing the same way. Of course they were. "Good morning," came a voice behind her. She turned, startled, mug in hand. Graham stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled to the elbow, collar unbuttoned. He looked less composed than usual. Still crisp, still calculated, but less armored. "You're up early," he said, walking to the fridge and pulling out a carafe of cold brew. "I make my own hours," she replied. He glanced over. "And you're barefoot." She raised her brows. "That a problem?" His lips twitched. "Almost. Just unusual. Miles tends to prefer order." "Well, Miles isn't in charge of my feet." Graham poured himself a glass and leaned against the counter. He watched her, like someone reading a book without deciding if he liked the plot. "You always this defiant? You always this observant?" Another pause, then soft. "Only when I'm trying to understand something." She poured her coffee, careful not to speak until the silence thickened. "I'm not a puzzle," she said. "No," he said. "But you're unexpected." She turned to face him fully. "What exactly were you expecting, Graham? A woman who says thank you for the paycheck and keeps her head down? Someone who smiles for the cameras and stays quiet the rest of the time? I was expecting someone who wouldn't make everything a battle." "I don't make it a battle," she said, voice low. "I just don't disappear." They stood there for a beat, too long. Then Graham turned away, setting his glass on the counter with quiet precision. "I have meetings all day. Naomi wants us to do a photo session this week. Lifestyle shots." "You and me at home. Candid. Charming." Raina scoffed. "You want fake photos of a fake marriage? It's called narrative building. And you're okay living a lie?" "I'm living a strategy." She shook her head. "No wonder Claire ran." The name slipped out before she could stop it. Graham froze. The air shifted. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "That was—" "No," he said, voice even. "You're not wrong." He moved toward the door, but paused just before leaving. "This arrangement only works if we don't poke old wounds, Raina." She nodded, heart knocking in her chest. He disappeared down the hall. She sipped her coffee, slowly, letting the heat calm the rising tide inside her. Later that afternoon, Delilah swung by unannounced, striding into Raina's guest wing with a bag slung over one shoulder and sunglasses perched on her head. "We're going shopping." Raina looked up from her laptop. "Shopping for what?" "Your public image." "Is it on clearance?" Delilah grinned. "Not even close, but it needs help." Raina sighed. "Let me guess. Naomi sent you?" "Nope. This one's all me." "You're my sister-in-law now. Which means You reflect on me. So if you're going to keep walking around this mansion in Target jeans and sass, I need to at least get you some new heels to match your attitude. I like my jeans, and I like you. That's why I'm helping you not get eaten alive at your first gala next weekend. Raina blinked. Gala? Delilah sat beside her. Did Graham not tell you? No. We haven't exactly had time to chat. Delilah tilted her head. You know, for a fake marriage, the tension in this house is very real. Raina didn't respond, just stared down at the faint blue veins in her wrist. Come on, Delilah said, pulling her up. Let me dress you like the beautiful disruptor you are. 3 hours and 7 boutiques later, Raina stood in front of a mirrored wall wearing a soft emerald green gown. It hugged her curves and fell in waves at her feet. Her hair was pinned up, a few curls left loose to frame her face. She barely recognized herself. Delilah stood behind her, hands on hips. There she is, she said, powerful, poised. A little bit dangerous. I look expensive. You are expensive. $1 million wife, remember? Raina met her own eyes in the mirror. They hadn't changed. Still sharp, still questioning. Delilah? Yeah? Do you think Graham regrets this? Delilah didn't answer right away. I think Graham doesn't know what to do with someone who can't be bought, and that scares him. Raina looked down at her hands. I'm not trying to scare him. I know, Delilah said softly. But you're not trying to fit in either. That's what makes you different. It's also what makes you a threat to everything he thought he wanted. The mirror blurred a little. Not with tears, just with the weight of truth. Raina touched the lavender sachet in her coat pocket. Somewhere between intention and impulse, something real had begun to take root. She didn't know if it was love, but it was definitely not a lie. The ballroom shimmered with candlelight and crystal. 100 murmurs floated beneath the sound of string instruments, each one dripping with curiosity, anticipation, or thinly veiled judgment. Charleston's elite had gathered for the annual Whitmore Foundation Gala, and for the first time in a decade, they weren't here for the cause. They were here for the scandal, the marriage, the mystery woman. Raina stood just beyond the velvet curtain, separating the main floor from the waiting area. Her palms were damp, the emerald dress clung like second skin, and her hair was swept up in a low twist that made her look like someone who belonged to this world. But her heart raced like she was about to steal something. You good? Delilah asked beside her, adjusting the clasp on Raina's clutch. No, Delilah grinned. Perfect. A server passed, offering champagne. Raina declined. Graham's already inside, Delilah added. He arrived 30 minutes ago, alone. Why? Power move. Let them see him first. Then bring in the surprise. Raina narrowed her eyes. I'm not livestock at a county fair. You're the only woman in that room who isn't, Delilah said, stepping closer. So when you walk in, don't shrink. Let them stare. Let them whisper. Then give them something to choke on. Raina's laugh was short. Nervous. That your version of a pep talk? That's my version of a threat. The curtain parted, and Naomi appeared. Her tone was cool, clipped. Time. Raina took a breath and stepped through. The room didn't fall silent, but it slowed. Eyes turned. Conversations hesitated. Forks paused mid-air. 1 breath. 2. Then came the murmurs. That's her? No way. She's not what I expected. Raina walked slowly, posture tall, the hem of her gown grazing the marble. She met no one's eyes, but felt all of them. She reached Graham's side, and he turned just slightly, eyes scanning her face. "You clean up well," he said, voice low. "You still talk like you're ordering a press release." He smirked, barely. They faced the crowd together now, shoulder to shoulder, hands not touching. Naomi motioned to the photographer, who lifted his camera. "Smile," Graham muttered. Raina turned her face toward him, and something in her chest tightened. Not because of the pressure, not because of the lights. Because for half a second, he looked at her, not through her, not past her, but at her. And his expression softened. Click. The flash broke the spell. As the night unspooled around them, Raina learned quickly how to dance with conversation. She met donors, journalists, board members. They asked pointed questions under the guise of curiosity. "Where did you two meet again?" "Oh, you work with your hands. How charming. Tell me, how does one adjust to such a lifestyle?" She smiled when it mattered, deflected when it didn't. And when a woman in a diamond choker leaned in to whisper, "Did you always dream of marrying up?" Raina looked her dead in the eyes and said, "No, I dreamed of building something on my own. But this was just fate being weird." The woman blinked, said nothing. Graham overheard the exchange. His lips curled, almost pride. Later, near the dessert table, she leaned toward him. "You still think this arrangement is working?" He sipped his wine. "You're doing fine." "Not what I asked." He hesitated. "It's more believable than I expected." "Because I learned how to smile on cue? Because you're not what they expect?" "You're better." That stopped her. She studied him, searching for the lie, the manipulation. But he was looking at her again. That same way, like he wasn't quite sure what to make of her. "I don't need you to flatter me, Graham." "I'm not." "Then why does it sound like you mean it?" He opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. A woman appeared beside them, tall, graceful, platinum blonde. Her voice smooth and familiar. "Graham?" He stiffened. "Claire?" Raina froze. The woman, the Claire, extended her hand toward Raina, elegant, unreadable. "You must be the new wife." Raina shook her hand, firm and calm. "You must be the old one." Claire's lips twitched. "Touché," Graham cut in. "Claire, now's not the time. I'm just saying hello." "To stir something," Raina added. "That's what you're really here for, isn't it?" Claire tilted her head. "I just wanted to see what kind of woman could make Graham rewrite every rule he's ever lived by. Now I know." "And what do you see?" Raina asked. "Cool." Claire smiled, sharp. "A spark, unexpected, dangerous." "I underestimated you." "Most people do." Claire leaned in slightly, voice quieter. "Just be careful. Graham doesn't know how to love something he can't control." And with that, she walked away. Raina stood frozen for a beat, then turned to Graham. "Is she right?" He looked at her, the muscle in his jaw tight. "I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the best I've got." She nodded slowly, heart pounding harder than it had all night. "Well, I hope for your sake you learn fast, because I'm not going to live under glass just to make you look human." He didn't argue, just watched her walk away toward Delilah. From across the room, Claire sipped her champagne and faded into the crowd. The gala sparkled on, unaware of the storm quietly building at its center. Rain whispered against the windows of the Whitmore estate, like a secret too gentle to speak aloud. The storm had rolled in overnight, blanketing Charleston in a soft, persistent hush. Inside the house, everything was still, the kind of still that came after something had cracked, but before it had fully broken. Raina sat cross-legged on the chaise by the window in her room, her reflection faint in the glass. She wore one of the silk robes Delilah insisted she'd need. For the optics, she'd said. But Raina had chosen it today because it was the only thing that felt light enough to wear with the weight in her chest. Claire's words still clung to her like humidity. Graham doesn't know how to love something he can't control. She didn't want those words to mean anything, but they did. There was a knock. "Come in," she said, not turning. The door opened with the soft sound of intention. Then silence. Graham stepped into the room but didn't speak right away. She saw him in the reflection, barefoot, casual for once. Gray shirt, dark pants. No tie, no watch. Just a man uncertain about what to do next. She waited. "I didn't know she'd be there," he finally said. Raina turned slowly. "You didn't?" "No. I haven't spoken to Claire since that day." And yet she knew exactly where to show up. Knew what to say. She always did. Raina stood, wrapping the robe tighter. And what she said, was it true? He looked at her, steady, then dropped his eyes. "I don't know. That's not enough anymore, Graham." "I'm trying," he said, stepping closer. "This whole thing, it's made me look at parts of myself I've spent years avoiding. Well, maybe next time, look before dragging someone else into the mess." Her voice cracked. Just slightly. He stopped walking. "I didn't expect you to care this much," he said, voice quiet. "I didn't expect you to matter this much," she shot back, breathing unsteady. They stood in the soft light of the storm. Two people bound by an agreement. Neither of them understood anymore. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said. "You didn't, not yet. But I've seen how you build walls, Graham, and I won't disappear behind one." A long pause stretched between them. "You make me uncomfortable," he admitted. "Good," she said. "That means I'm real." He stared at her for a moment, then nodded. Just once. "I have a business meeting in Savannah tomorrow. It's for the company's coastal expansion deal. A media appearance. Dinner with investors. Naomi thinks we should go together." Raina tilted her head. "You inviting me as your wife or your prop?" He held her gaze. "As someone who changes the room just by walking into it." The answer was too clean, too well rehearsed. But behind his voice, there was something softer. Unpolished, almost uncertain, she exhaled slowly. "All right, I'll go. But I'm not smiling for anyone unless I feel like it." "I wouldn't expect you to." She gave him a look. "Oh, I'm sure someone in your world already wrote a press release for how I should behave. I just won't be following it." He almost smiled. "Noted." He turned to go, hand on the door, then paused. "Raina?" She looked up. "You scared Claire." That surprised her. "Why?" "Because she knew how to match my ambition." "But you make me question it." The door clicked shut behind him. Raina stood in the silence that followed, heart pounding, unsure whether it was a warning or a compliment. She walked back to the window and pressed her palm to the cool glass. The rain had lightened, but the air still carried weight. She reached into her dresser and pulled out the lavender sachet, holding it to her chest. She didn't trust him. Not yet, but something was shifting, and she wasn't sure if she should run from it or lean in and see where the storm would carry her. The train ride to Savannah was smoother than expected, quiet except for the low murmur of conversation from the other first-class passengers and the rhythmic hum of the tracks. Raina sat across from Graham in a private cabin with wide windows and a tray of untouched croissants between them. He was answering emails. She was staring out at the moss-covered trees flying by like ghosts of the Old South. "I thought CEOs had assistants for that," she said, nodding at his phone. "I do," he replied without looking up. "But some things I need to handle myself." She gave him a look. "Control freak much?" He glanced up at that, eyes sharp, then softened. "You're not wrong." She leaned back in her seat. "You always been like this? All tight collars and tight grip?" He set the phone down. "You mean, was I born a machine?" "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." There was a pause. The train curved slightly. The view outside shifted to wide stretches of low country marsh. "I used to be different," he said, almost like he was confessing it. "College was a dream. Building LinkTech from scratch felt like flying. I had nothing to lose. Everything was about possibility. And now? Now everything's about risk." She studied him. "So you live your whole life trying not to fall?" He looked out the window. "Something like that." The silence between them wasn't empty. It buzzed, full of things unsaid. Raina leaned forward, her voice softer. "You ever think maybe the fall is the point?" He looked at her then, not with that surface-level glance he gave reporters or board members, but like he was trying to understand something that scared him. "I don't think I'd know how to land." "Then maybe that's what you're supposed to learn." The train slowed as it approached the station. Graham picked up his phone again, but his fingers hovered, unmoving. Finally, he slid it into his pocket. "We're meeting 2 investors at the Whitman Club. Dinner at 7. Naomi's arranged for photos, handshakes, a few subtle smiles." "Subtle smiles," she repeated. "Got it. Should I rehearse?" He smiled, actually smiled. "You're better unscripted." She raised a brow. That sounded suspiciously like a compliment. "Don't get used to it." She laughed under her breath, and for a fleeting second, the cabin didn't feel like a stage. It felt like a space between 2 people pretending a little less than before. The Whitman Club was elegance in gold trim and restraint. High ceilings, velvet booths, walls lined with black and white photographs of dead governors and living billionaires. The kind of place where every whisper echoed money. Raina wore navy, tailored, sleek, bold against her skin. Graham, predictably, was in charcoal grey, the tie knotted just so. He walked beside her, hand resting lightly on her back as they entered. The gesture wasn't rehearsed. It just happened. Naomi met them at the entrance, tablet in hand, earrings glinting under the chandelier. "They're already seated," she whispered. "Weston and Calder." "Don't mention the IPO rumors unless they bring it up. And smile like you mean it, please." Raina smirked. "That one's on him." They approached the table where 2 men in their 50s stood to greet them, both in pressed shirts and practiced charm. Introductions were made, drinks were ordered, the conversation flowed. Mostly, Raina listened more than she spoke. She watched Graham in his element, confident, measured, knowing exactly when to agree and when to challenge. But every time she caught his eye, his rhythm stuttered. Just a beat. It wasn't much. But it was real. "And this must be the wife," Weston said during a lull. His voice was rich, slow, with that southern lilt that disguised sharpness with sugar. "Raina," she said, offering her hand. "Tell me," he said, holding her gaze. "What's it like being married to one of the most ambitious men on the coast?" She didn't hesitate. "Like holding hands with a lightning storm." "Beautiful, powerful, but you better know when to let go." The table laughed. Graham didn't. He stared at her. After dinner, as they stood near the valet, Graham leaned in. "What was that about?" "What?" "That lightning line." She shrugged. It landed, didn't it? You made me sound dangerous. You are, she said. To yourself, he paused. You really think that? I think you built a kingdom and forgot how to breathe inside it. He exhaled through his nose. That's poetic. And deeply annoying. Good. Maybe you'll remember it. They rode in silence to the hotel Naomi had booked for appearances. 2 rooms, side by side. Matching balconies. Raina stood by hers, staring at the city lights, while the river moved below them, steady and slow. A knock at the sliding glass door made her turn. Graham stood on his own balcony, a glass of something amber in hand. Come out, he said. She hesitated, then stepped over. The breeze was cool. The city pulsed beneath them. I meant what I said on the train, she told him. About the fall. About needing to learn how to land. He looked out at the horizon, his voice low. I used to think success was the landing, but maybe it's just the cover story we tell ourselves, so we don't admit we're scared of what's next. She glanced at him. So what's next for you? I don't know, he said. But I'm starting to wonder what would happen if I stopped trying to write every outcome. Raina looked down at the glass in his hand, then up at him. You really mean that? He met her eyes. I think I'm starting to. A long pause. Then softly, almost like a secret, she said, For someone so calculated, you're really bad at pretending around me. He smiled. And this time it wasn't a press smile. It wasn't armor. It was him. And for the first time, Raina didn't feel like she was just playing a role. She felt seen, and worse, maybe she was starting to want to be. The morning after Savannah bloomed with a kind of quiet that didn't ask for attention. It just existed, soft and complete. Raina sat at the edge of the hotel bed, her coffee untouched, the city's reflection stretching across the tall windows like a watercolor still drying. She hadn't slept much. Not because she was restless, but because her mind kept replaying the balcony. The moment Graham looked at her, not like an asset, not like a risk, but like something unknown. Like he wanted to understand her. And the worst part? She let him. A knock pulled her from thought. Room service. She opened the door, expecting a card, maybe a clipboard. Instead, a woman in her late 20s stood there, camera slung over one shoulder, tablet in hand, smile sharp. Hi, I'm Lainey. Naomi sent me. She wants updated PR shots, candid, light, morning after success kind of vibe. Raina blinked. Now? She wants to catch the sunrise with you two. On the terrace. I didn't agree to this. Lainey shrugged. Neither did I, technically, but Naomi's persuasive. You coming? Raina considered slamming the door. Instead, she sighed, grabbed her blazer off the chair, and stepped into the hallway. Graham was already out there, leaning against the railing with a cup of tea, face turned toward the light. When he heard her footsteps, he turned, and for once, didn't mask the surprise in his eyes. You okay? I think I just got ambushed by a very polite photographer. He gave a low laugh. Yeah, that tracks. Lainey directed them gently. Just lean against the railing. Talk like you like each other. Laugh once or twice. Raina gave Graham a side eye. Can you do that? Laugh once or twice? He smirked. Try me. They faced the sunrise. Charleston looked far away now. So did everything that came before it. The camera clicked. Again. Pretend to share a secret, Lainey said, voice breezy. Raina leaned in. You do realize you're the most exhausting man I've ever met. He chuckled, actually chuckled. That's your secret? No, that's your problem. The camera kept going. Something about the moment felt too easy, too close. When Lainey finally lowered the camera and said, "Got it," Raina stepped back instinctively, like she'd been leaning over a ledge and just remembered how high up she was. "I need air," she said. "You're outside." "Then I need space." She left before he could respond. Back at the estate that evening, the house felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was because Miles informed them a national blog had picked up a behind the billionaire's marriage story. Maybe it was the photo on the homepage. Raina. Graham, backlit by sunrise. It looked intimate. Too intimate. Graham stood in the parlor, scrolling through the article on his phone, jaw set. Naomi was already at the fireplace, pacing. "This isn't bad," she said, hands fluttering. "It's good. It humanizes you." "I don't want to be humanized through a lie," he snapped. Naomi froze. "It's not a lie if you're not pretending anymore." Graham turned slowly to face her. Raina, stepping in just behind them, caught his expression and the way it shifted when he saw her. Naomi followed his line of sight. "Okay, maybe I'm not imagining it." "Imagining what?" Raina asked carefully. "That you two are blurring lines." "We're still under contract," Graham said. "But your face says something else." He didn't respond. Naomi sighed. "Fine, it's your circus. But if this relationship tanks publicly, so does every deal you've touched this quarter. So whatever's happening, fix it or figure it out." She left them in silence. Raina crossed her arms. "That's quite the threat." "She's not wrong," he said. "Everything's hanging on perception." She nodded slowly. "And what if I'm tired of being a perception?" His voice dropped. "Then stop pretending. Tell me what's real for you." She stepped closer, measured. "You want real? Okay." Her eyes didn't blink. "I don't know if I like you. I don't trust you. But I can't stop noticing how you listen when you think no one else is. I can't stop noticing how you ask questions like you don't expect people to answer honestly, because you're not used to the truth." She was breathing faster now. "And what's worse, when I see you look at me like you mean something, part of me wants to believe it." He didn't move. Didn't speak. Then, "I do mean something," he said quietly. "You do too." The silence that followed wasn't hollow. It was fragile, charged. Then her phone buzzed in her pocket. She stepped back, checking it. A message from Mabel. Simple. "Need to talk. Come by tomorrow. Urgent." She looked up, her chest tightening. "I have to go home for the day," he nodded. "Is everything all right?" "I don't know yet." He didn't press. Just walked her to the door, holding it open without a word. As she stepped out into the dusk, she felt the shift, the pull. This arrangement was no longer just strategic. It was emotional. And emotion, unlike strategy, didn't care about contracts. The late afternoon sun slanted through the cracked blinds of Mabel's front porch as Raina stepped onto the uneven wooden boards, clutching the strap of her canvas bag. Everything about the old neighborhood felt smaller now, quieter. The cracked sidewalks, the porches with chipped paint, the thick smell of fried catfish wafting from someone's kitchen 2 houses down. This was where she'd come from. Before the contract, before the mansion. Before Graham Whitmore. She knocked. Mabel opened the door almost immediately, her face creased with something between worry and relief. "Took you long enough," the older woman said, stepping aside. "I came as soon as I saw your message." Inside, the house was exactly as Raina remembered it. Lace curtains, soft gospel playing from the radio in the kitchen, the faint scent of lavender and starch safe. Lived in. Real. Mabel lowered herself into her favorite chair, the one by the window with the old crocheted throw folded neatly on the back. Her fingers twisted the edge of it as she looked at Raina with eyes sharper than her voice. "There's been talk," Mabel began, not bothering to ease into it. "About you. About Graham. About money and marriage and motives." Raina exhaled. "Let me guess. Miss Clara from the salon has theories." "Baby, half this street has theories." "But I don't care about them. I care about you." "I know." Raina sat across from her, suddenly unsure where to put her hands. Mabel leaned forward. "I asked you to come because I need you to tell me something, Raina. Straight. No fluff. No performance. Is this man hurting you?" "What?" Raina's voice cracked, caught between surprise and offense. "No, Mabel. He's not. He wouldn't. I don't mean with his hands. I mean with his life, with the way he carries his name like a sword." Raina went quiet. Mabel's voice softened. "It's okay to say yes. It's okay to admit when something feels too big to breathe inside." Raina looked down at her lap. "It's complicated. Love usually is, even the fake kind." Raina laughed weakly. "It wasn't supposed to be this messy. Nothing worth learning ever is." She looked up, eyes glassy. "He's starting to feel real, and I don't know if that's good or dangerous." Mabel reached out and covered her hand. "Then ask yourself this. Do you feel more like you when you're with him? Or do you feel like you're vanishing?" Raina didn't answer. Did she feel like herself? With Graham, things were louder. Brighter, harder, yes, but never dull. She didn't shrink. She pushed back, and somewhere in that push, she'd begun to care. Not about the deal. Not about the mansion. About him. "I'm not vanishing," she whispered. Mabel smiled. "Then maybe it's not dangerous. Maybe it's just different." They sat in silence for a while, letting the weight of it all settle. Then Mabel said quietly, "One more thing, child." "What's that?" "The papers. From that first week. The ones Claire's cousin notarized. They're not sealed the way they should be. I overheard something at the courthouse when I was down there handling taxes." Raina's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I mean someone's been digging." "And they weren't subtle." Raina straightened. "You think someone's trying to undo the marriage?" "I think someone doesn't like that it ever happened." "Claire." "Of course." The gala, the press. That moment at the fountain when Claire said, "He doesn't know how to love what he can't control." She hadn't just been bitter, she'd been warning her, or worse, laying groundwork. Chum. When Raina returned to the estate that evening, the lights were low, and the scent of cedarwood drifted through the entry. Graham stood at the bar in the parlor, rolling a glass between his palms. He looked up when she entered. "You disappeared. I had to see someone." He studied her. "You okay?" "No." He set the glass down. "Talk to me." She walked slowly into the room, the silk of her blouse catching the low light. There was no performance left in her, just clarity. "Someone's been looking into our arrangement," she said. Claire's name came up. He didn't blink. "Of course it did." "You knew?" "I suspected. She's never been subtle when she's angry." "Well, she's not angry. She's strategic. And if those documents get challenged, Graham," he stepped closer, "then I'll protect you. I'll fix it." She looked at him. "That's not what I'm asking." "Then what are you asking?" "I'm asking if you still see this as a contract, or if you see me." The question hung in the air like thunder before a downpour. Graham didn't answer right away. He stepped even closer, until the space between them was more breadth than distance. "I see you," he said. "And it terrifies me." She didn't move, didn't run, didn't flinch. "Then maybe we're both terrified," she whispered. "But we're already in it." He reached for her hand. This time she let him. Not for the cameras, not for Naomi, not for the optics. For them. Whatever this was becoming, whether it held or cracked, it was no longer fiction. It was theirs. The sun had barely crested the horizon when Graham stood in the driveway, hands in his coat pockets, eyes scanning the grey sky like it might offer answers. The air was heavy with mist, thick with the kind of silence that only came before everything changed. He hadn't slept. After Raina's words the night before, after her hand slipped into his like it had always belonged there, something inside him had shifted. For the first time in years, he didn't know what the next move was, and for once he didn't want to. Inside the house, Raina stood in front of the mirror, holding a brush in one hand and her reflection in the other. Her hair was still damp, curling softly at the edges, but it wasn't vanity that held her there. It was the woman staring back at her. Not the street girl who used to count tips and pray the rent check wouldn't bounce. Not the fake wife in a designer gown. Just her. She touched the lavender sachet that now lived permanently in the drawer beside the sink. She wasn't pretending anymore, and that made what was coming harder to bear. Her phone buzzed. A single message from Delilah. "You need to see this. Check the link before Graham does." Heart thudding, she clicked the message. A browser opened, her face Graham's. The photo from Savannah, blown up in full color across the front page of a national business site. The wife, the whistleblower, and the hidden clause. Is Graham Whitmore's marriage just a $1 PR move? The article was damning. Pieced together from anonymous tips, a leaked notary stamp, and just enough truth to feel radioactive. Raina backed away from the sink, her chest tight, knees trembling. She raced down the stairs barefoot, phone still in her hand. Graham was in the kitchen by then, staring at his phone like it had just betrayed him. "You saw it," she said, breathless. He looked up slowly. "It's everywhere. I didn't leak it, Graham. I know." His voice was flat, distant, like he'd already left the room emotionally, even though he was standing right there. "Say something," she whispered. He set the phone down. "I told you this could ruin everything. And now what?" she snapped. "Now it's all my fault." "No, it's just Claire." She froze. "What about her?" He hesitated. "I saw her last week, briefly. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to make it worse." "You what?" "She came by the office unannounced. Said she wanted closure, but it wasn't about that. She was fishing. And you gave her bait," Raina said, voice shaking. "I didn't mean to." "No," she said bitterly. "You just didn't care enough to stop her. That's not fair." "What's not fair, Graham, is I've been out here trying to belong to a world that wants to spit me out, and the one person I thought might understand still keeps secrets, like I'm disposable." He stepped toward her, regret written across his face. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. But it did." She stepped back, hand against the counter for support. "I need to get out of here." He blinked. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I need space. Real space. Not the kind you offer with guarded smiles and business contracts." She moved past him, heart cracking with every step. He didn't stop her. That hurt most of all. She didn't go back to Mabel's. She found a small inn just outside the city, one of those old converted homes with creaky floors and lemon trees in the courtyard. Quiet. Removed, anonymous, Her room smelled like cedar and clean sheets. She lay on the bed, eyes on the ceiling, trying to find a version of herself that wasn't tethered to Graham's voice. Graham's name. Graham's pull. But even here, he lingered. The way he said her name. The way his voice softened when he forgot to guard it. The way he admitted fear, like it was a foreign language he was still learning to speak. She thought about the contract, about the clause that promised her $1 million if she stayed the full year. But none of that mattered anymore. The truth was, she wasn't afraid of losing the money. She was afraid of losing something real before it ever got the chance to become what it could be. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. Not from Delilah. From Graham. "You're right. About all of it." About me. About Claire. I've been trying to manage the story instead of living the truth. "I don't want this to end like everything else I've built. Expensive, polished, and hollow. I don't care about the article. I care about you. Come home when you're ready. I'll be here. Not as your contract. As your choice." Raina read it twice, 3 times. She didn't cry. But something in her loosened, something long held, something that sounded a lot like hope. She didn't know what came next, but she knew she'd walk toward it on her own terms, and maybe, just maybe, he'd meet her there. Rain tapped gently against the window panes of the small inn. Raina sat at the corner desk, a cup of coffee in her hand gone cold. She hadn't touched it in hours. The message from Graham still glowed softly on her phone, resting beside her sketchpad. The same pad she used to design custom aprons for Mabel's cafe, back when life was simpler, and everything felt temporary. Her fingers hovered above the page now, pen ready, heart not. She had always drawn to breathe. But tonight, every line felt heavy with decisions she hadn't made yet. The truth was, Graham's message didn't change the storm that had built between them. But it made her wonder. Had the storm finally washed something clean? Her eyes wandered to the mirror across the room. She walked to it. This time, she didn't just glance. She looked. Her curls were a little wilder than usual, her eyes a little tired. But something else had settled in her face. Clarity. The kind that came not from answers, but from the willingness to ask the hard questions out loud. She picked up her phone again, read the message once more. "Come home when you're ready." She wasn't ready yet. But she was close. Graham stood alone in his home office, blinds open, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled. The rain outside reflected on the floor like a mirror, distorting the clean angles of the room. He had read her silence for days now. He knew what silence meant, and for once he wasn't running from it. He was living in it. Waiting. Because everything before her had been timelines and contracts and control. And all those things had gotten him here, rich, respected, alone. He didn't want that anymore. And for the first time in his life, he was willing to lose what he'd built to protect what he'd almost destroyed. Chatek. The next morning, Raina knocked on a door she hadn't opened in weeks. Delilah's. The apartment smelled like cinnamon and sarcasm. "Girl," Delilah said the second she opened it, arms crossed, eyes wide. "You better tell me this is either an apology, a confession, or a request for wine before noon." "All 3, Raina said with a weak laugh. Delilah pulled her in immediately. "Come on, spill." Raina dropped her bag on the couch, exhaling like she'd been holding something inside since the moment she left Graham's house. "He wrote me." "Graham?" Raina nodded. Delilah rolled her eyes. Of course he did. Man gets hit with the first real consequence in his life, and suddenly he's Shakespeare with a cell phone. It wasn't like that. Raina said. It felt honest, scared even. Delilah raised an eyebrow. Graham Whitmore. Scared? Please. That man's idea of panic is running out of imported matcha. Raina smirked. Then softened. He said he doesn't care about the article or the fallout. That he just wants me to come home. Not for the image. For him. Delilah leaned against the kitchen counter. And what do you want? That question. It cut through everything. Raina walked to the window and stared out at the small courtyard where Delilah's tomato plant clung to life despite the season. I want to be seen, not showcased. You think he sees you now? I think he's learning how to. Delilah sighed. Then I guess the real question is, can you forgive him for who he was long enough to let him become something better? Raina didn't answer. But her hand drifted toward the pocket of her coat. Inside it, folded into quarters, was a drawing she'd made last night. An old Southern-style home wrapped in ivy. 2 people on the porch, not facing each other, but sitting side by side, sharing the same sunset. Not perfect, but present. She folded it again, tucked it away, then reached for her keys. Cherche. That evening, just as the sky dipped from golden to navy, Graham heard the softest sound, a door creaking open. He turned. Raina stood there. Her coat was damp, her curls frizzed at the edges, but she looked steady. Grounded, real. You left the porch light on, she said. I was hoping you'd notice. She stepped inside, the warmth hitting her like memory. He didn't move, didn't rush. Just watched her with something in his expression she hadn't seen before. Humility. I'm not here to pretend this didn't hurt, she said. Or to erase what was said, or what wasn't. I wouldn't ask you to, he said gently. But I am here to say, if you want to build something that isn't built on image or money or damage control, if you want to build something honest, then I'll meet you there. His voice was quiet. I do. She nodded once. Then walked to him. They didn't kiss, didn't even touch. They just stood in the quiet, sharing the same breath. For now, that was enough, because the storm hadn't broken them. It had carved them open, and the rebuilding, if it came, would be real. Raina stood at the kitchen counter, sleeves rolled up, flour dusting her hands, as she shaped dough into rough little biscuits, an old habit from Mabel's kitchen when words got too heavy. The air was quiet, except for the soft hum of Billie Holiday, playing from the old speaker in the corner, and the occasional thump of rain against the roof. The kind of stillness that asked for nothing except to be felt. Behind her, Graham leaned against the doorframe. He hadn't said much since she walked back in the night before, and neither had she. But sometimes silence wasn't a wall, it was a waiting room. You're making biscuits, he said, like it was a fact that required investigation. Yeah, she replied without turning. It's what I do when I'm thinking. What are you thinking about? She paused, wiped her hands on a towel, then faced him. Whether we're ready to stop being careful. He straightened a little. Careful? She nodded. We tiptoe around each other, around the truth, around this whole messy thing that started as a contract and turned into something else. He didn't deny it. We've both been protecting something. Yeah, she said, folding her arms. You were protecting your name. I was protecting my heart. They stood like that for a moment, 2 people on either side of an invisible line neither was sure how to cross. I don't want to protect my name anymore if it costs me this, he said quietly. Or you. She searched his face, trying to find the cracks beneath the polished surface. And they were there now. Faint, but real, and more beautiful than the gloss he used to wear like armor. You said something once, she said. You said you didn't know how to land. I remember. Well, maybe you don't need to land. Maybe you just need to trust the fall. He took a step closer. And if I fall hard, then maybe I'll be there, she whispered, to catch you, or at least fall with you. He was right in front of her now, close enough to see the cinnamon freckles on her cheek. Close enough to feel the breath between her words. I want to try, he said. Then stop trying, she murmured. And just be here. He touched her cheek, slowly, like he was learning how to be gentle, then leaned in, not to kiss her, not yet, but to rest his forehead against hers. It was more intimate than anything they'd shared, and more terrifying. Later that night, the rain had stopped, leaving the patio soaked and shimmering under the moonlight. They sat outside with mugs of tea, wrapped in blankets. The air smelled like jasmine and wet stone. Raina looked up at the stars. You ever think about what your life would have been like if LinkTech had failed? All the time, he admitted. What do you see? He took a sip, thought. Less pressure. More space. I think I would have ended up teaching. Maybe back at Stanford. Or traveling. She smiled. You? Backpacking through Europe in a hoodie and flip-flops? He laughed. Okay, maybe not flip-flops, but yeah, something where the only numbers I care about are train schedules. And no shareholders to impress. He looked at her then. Just someone to come home to. She felt the shift in the air again, that slow unraveling of old fears, that quiet invitation to be known. I used to think love was a reward, she said. Something you got after proving yourself. He tilted his head. And now? Now I think love is a risk. A daily choice to show up, even when it's hard, even when it's scary. He looked at her for a long time. Then I'm choosing you. She blinked, not because it surprised her, but because part of her had waited her whole life to hear something like that said, not out of obligation or charm, but truth. She didn't reply right away. She just reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. They sat like that, side by side, the night holding them in its quiet arms. Until Graham said softly, "There's something I need to tell you." Her body tensed. He noticed. "It's not bad," he added. "Just overdue." She waited. "The contract. The clause about the money. I had Naomi add a subsection after our trip to Savannah." "What kind of subsection?" "One that says if you walk away before the year's over, you still keep every cent." Her throat tightened. "Why would you do that?" "Because I needed to stop owning your choices. I wanted you to know that staying, if you do, won't be about the deal." She stared at him. "You changed the rules." "I had to," he said, "to give us a chance to write new ones." Tears welled up behind her eyes before she could stop them. "I don't want the money, Graham," she whispered. "I know. I just want this, honest, messy. Real." He pulled her closer. "So do I." They didn't need a kiss to seal it. They just needed that moment. Shared, silent, sacred. The kind of moment that makes you believe love, real love, isn't something you fall into. It's something you build. Brick by brick, truth by truth, one breath at a time. A soft breeze carried the scent of jasmine through the open balcony doors of Graham's study. The evening was unusually warm for spring, the kind of southern night where the air wrapped around you like silk, inviting quiet thoughts and braver conversations. Raina stood by the glass, staring down at the garden lit with golden strings of light, her hand resting against the cool frame. Below, landscapers were prepping for the charity event Naomi insisted they still host, a final effort to save face after the media scandal had faded from a roar to a whisper. But Raina knew tonight wasn't about press, not anymore. It was about drawing a line in the sand between who they had been and who they might dare to become. Behind her, Graham paced, his suit jacket draped over a chair, tie loose, shirt sleeves rolled back. He wasn't pacing out of nerves. He was calculating, assessing risk, like always. Only now, the risk was her, and it terrified him. "You don't have to do this event," he said, finally breaking the silence. She didn't turn around. "Yes, I do." "Why? It's performative." "We've already survived the headlines. Why keep playing this game?" She slowly faced him, eyes calm but lit with something firm. "Because I want to rewrite the narrative. Not for them. For us. I want to stand beside you tonight, not as an obligation, not as your crisis cover, but as your choice." His throat worked to swallow emotion. "You already are. Then let's show them what that looks like." A beat. He stepped forward, his voice lower now. "You're sure?" She smiled, soft but unshaken. "Only about this." By the time guests began to arrive, the estate shimmered like something out of a dream. Paper lanterns floated above the garden, live jazz spilled softly across the lawn, and soft candlelight flickered from the tables set beneath the wide oak tree that had stood on the property longer than any of them. Raina descended the staircase in a floor-length ivory gown, simple, elegant, with no designer label, just her. She'd pulled her curls half up, her signature earrings glinting with each step. The crowd went silent when she entered. Not out of obligation, but awe. Graham stood near the garden entrance, black tux crisp, hands folded in front of him. When he saw her, his eyes didn't scan. They landed, stayed. She reached him slowly, and when she did, he leaned in, not with a kiss, but a whisper. "You're the most honest thing in this room." She touched his lapel lightly. "Then let's be honest together." He offered his arm. She took it. The night unfolded like a scene from a movie they hadn't dared write until now. Smiles weren't forced. Conversations weren't calculated. Even Naomi looked stunned when she passed them, raising an eyebrow that said, "Well, this wasn't in the deck, but I'm not mad at it." But not everyone was charmed. Claire appeared just past the hour mark, dressed in sleek emerald silk, her arm looped through the elbow of a venture capitalist, with a 1,000-watt smile and the emotional depth of a credit card commercial. She made a point of catching Graham's eye, then Raina's, then offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Raina didn't flinch. Graham leaned toward her. "She's trying to pull focus." Raina squeezed his arm. "Let her. We're not on her stage anymore." He looked at her, something proud flickering in his gaze. They moved on. Later, as the final course was cleared and glasses refilled, Graham stood beneath the lights, microphone in hand. The crowd quieted with polite interest. He cleared his throat, looked at Raina, then spoke. "I built Link Tech from a garage with 3 friends and a dream. I've spoken at summits, closed billion-dollar deals, and stood in front of boardrooms full of people who told me what success should look like." A pause. "But none of it taught me what home feels like." The silence stretched. "I married Raina under circumstances we both thought we understood. But what we didn't expect was that something real might grow from something strategic." The crowd shifted, some leaning in. "I won't spin it. We signed papers." We had terms. But somewhere between the board meetings and the breakfast tables, I found myself waking up wondering who she was dreaming of. I found myself wanting to earn her honesty, not just her presence. His voice cracked. Just slightly. She challenged me, made me uncomfortable. She saw every part of me and chose to stay. He turned to her then, setting the microphone aside. I don't care about the headlines, or the clauses, or the money. He took her hand, eyes never leaving hers. I just want to know if tomorrow and the day after and every day that follows, you'll still choose me. The entire garden held its breath. Raina stepped forward, touched his face gently, and whispered for only him to hear. Yes. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was full, warm, startled and delighted, and real. Claire vanished before dessert. Naomi teared up behind her champagne glass. Delilah sent a thumbs up from the back with a wink that nearly broke Raina into laughter. But none of it mattered more than this. The way Graham looked at her. Not like a man who'd won, but like a man who'd finally understood what was worth losing everything else to keep. And for the first time, they weren't performing. They were present, together, rooted. Home. The morning air was soft and full of light, the kind that made the world feel freshly painted. Sunlight poured through the tall windows of Mabel's porch as the small crowd settled onto folding chairs arranged beneath the giant oak tree in her yard. Spanish moss drifted like silk in the branches above, swaying in rhythm with the breeze. There were no velvet runners, no champagne towers, no photographers or press passes, just Raina and Graham. And the people who mattered. Delilah sat front row in a floral dress with pink heels too loud for the occasion, but somehow perfect. Naomi was there too, surprisingly casual in linen and no clipboard in sight. Mabel, regal in lavender, sat beside them with her Bible folded in her lap, smiling like she already knew every word that was about to be spoken. Graham adjusted his collar for the third time. Raina, standing just out of sight behind the porch screen, peeked out. He looked nervous. Good. She wanted this to be real. Wanted it to mean something beyond what they'd already survived. Beside her, Delilah whispered through the screen door, "Last chance to run." Raina smiled without turning. "I've already run. This time I'm staying." The music began. A single violin, played by one of Naomi's cousins from the conservatory. And then she stepped out. There was no gasp from the crowd. Just the soft sound of chairs creaking as everyone stood. Her dress was simple cotton, hand-sewn by a seamstress from the market. The bodice laced gently at the back. She wore her curls loose, with a single comb tucked behind her ear, Mabel's mother's, passed down like a secret blessing. When she reached Graham, she took his hand without ceremony. Just certainty. The officiant began, but Raina hardly heard him. She heard her heartbeat. She heard the sound of Graham's breathing. And then it was time to speak. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the man who had once tried to buy a marriage, but ended up earning a home. "I used to think love was a rescue," she began, her voice strong, steady. "That someone would find me and lift me from the hard places." She paused. "But now I know love isn't about being saved. It's about being seen." Truly, with all the cracks and contradictions and unfinished chapters, you saw me, Graham. Not as a charity case, not as a contract, as a person. And in the space where most people would have turned away, you stayed. His throat moved, but he didn't speak. Not yet. "I choose you today, not because I need to. Not because I'm supposed to, but because I want to." Because when I'm with you, I'm not trying to be anyone else." She let the silence wrap around them. Then the officiant nodded to Graham. He exhaled, laughed quietly, then looked at her like she was the most beautiful twist in a story he never expected. "I spent my life building things," he said. "Companies, deals, fortresses to keep people out. I thought success meant never needing anyone. I thought strength meant never being vulnerable." A long breath. "Then you came in, with your honesty, and your stubbornness, and your fire. And instead of breaking down my walls, you made me want to open the door." He reached into his pocket. Not for a ring. He already wore that. This was something else. A folded piece of paper. He handed it to her. She opened it slowly. It was her drawing, the porch, the two figures, sitting side by side. "I kept it," he said, "because that's us. We don't need fireworks. We just need a place to sit and stay." Her fingers trembled around the edges of the page, and then they said the final words. "I do, not loud, not dramatic. Just sure." Later that night, long after the chairs were folded and the last slice of cake eaten, Raina found herself barefoot on the porch, her head resting against Graham's shoulder. The stars were out in full. Mabel came to the door with 2 glasses of lemonade, handed them off without a word, then returned inside, humming something low and sweet. Graham took Raina's hand, traced a circle across her palm. "You ever think we'd end up here?" he asked. "Not for a second." "Me neither," she smiled. "That's what makes it good." He kissed her hand. "We have no script now." "Good," she whispered. "Now we can write our own." And they sat there beneath the stars, the porch light humming above them, the sound of crickets and jazz spilling softly into the dark. 2 people, no longer pretending, no longer performing, just loving. And for the first time, it was enough. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought matter to me either way.